Hey, how's it going, everyone? It's Ben Foggins Media Corner back again with a brand new video for today. Welcome back to another movie review, aka After I Saw review video for today. For this aka After I Saw review video for today, this is going to be my review on a movie that was released this year for 2022, which this movie just recently dropped by today in the UK, but this movie was actually released a week ago in the US, but like I said, this just recently dropped by today in the UK, and I just recently seen this movie. And I just got back. I saw this movie just a couple of hours ago, and I'm here to give you guys my full-on review on this release I just seen today. So today's review is going to be my review on the 2022 fantasy film, and that movie is 3,000 Years of Longing. This was directed by George Miller and stars Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba. And the story of this movie, we follow this woman who is a scholar named Alethea, played by Tilda Swinton, who travels to Istanbul to basically attend a conference. And meanwhile, while she's in Istanbul, she goes to this antique shop where she finds this antique bottle. And when she gets the bottle, she rubs on this bottle, and out comes from what was inside this bottle, it out comes the bottle is this magical, mythical being called Jinn, and his name's actually called Jinn, played by Idris Elba. And we do learn about his backstory on how all this happened to him and how he became trapped in this bottle. And which, whenever he was inside the bottle, some people, mostly women, found the bottle, and for Jinn, he granted them 3 wishes, but they were unable to grant all 3 of the wishes. They only managed to get 2 wishes, but they never got the 3rd wish. And whenever that happened to Jinn, he ended up getting trapped inside the bottle. And so many years later, we see Alethea finding this bottle and rubbing on the bottle and meeting Jinn for the first time. And when Jinn meets Alethea, of course, he grants her 3 wishes for his freedom. So we see Alethea figure out what she can do with Jinn and all that. And soon later on, the movie sort of becomes like a romantic movie. So that's pretty much the story of 3,000 Years of Longing. Now, like I said before, this movie was of course directed by George Miller, who of course made the Mad Max movies, and of course for his last movie, it was of course Mad Max Fury Road. And what can I say that hasn't been said about that movie already? That movie is a straight up masterpiece. It's one of the best movies ever made, one of the best action movies ever made, and one of the best movies of 2015. And arguably, of course, it is my number 1 favorite movie of 2015. And if I hadn't seen the movie today, it wouldn't be on my number 1 spot for the best of 2015 movies. If I still hadn't seen it, it would have been, for my favorite film of that year, it would have been Star Wars: The Force Awakens. If it was still that, people today might bash on me or something like that, because nowadays people don't really want to talk about The Force Awakens anymore, or even the other 2 sequels or the sequel trilogy of Star Wars. But let's just not get into that. But when it came to this new movie by George Miller, I didn't hear a whole lot about this movie going into it. I never saw the trailers or anything until, well, I actually did see the trailer for this movie before I actually did see this movie today. But the thing that really introduced me to this new George Miller movie was the posters and the advertisements. They did look pretty interesting, and it kind of really intrigued me. And for the 2 main stars of this movie, who were of course Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba, I was pretty intrigued to see what they can do for this George Miller movie. And like I said, this movie was released just a week ago in the US, and for this movie in the UK, this was just recently dropped by today in the UK. And I did see this movie today, on the 2nd of September, and there wasn't a lot of people in my screening, but there was a fair amount of people who were in my screening who were about to watch this movie alongside with me. And after walking out of this movie, was this movie as good as Fury Road? Not exactly. I wouldn't put this movie as the exact same level as Fury Road, but I still had a really good time with this movie. But I do have a few problems with this movie, which we'll get to later on, but let's just get into my positives for this movie. Of course, for the 2 main stars who are in this movie, Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba, for the acting talent in this movie, it's absolutely great. I really like the performances in this movie, and I also really like the chemistry as well in this movie too. And the direction by George Miller looks absolutely beautiful, from for everything he captured on screen, from its visual effects, makeup effects, costume designs, and also set designs. For everything for capturing all of that on screen, it just looks absolutely beautiful. And also, it has a bit of high energy to it as well. And for having that in this movie, it just felt like George Miller is just doing whatever the hell he wants with this movie all over again since Fury Road. But I wouldn't say his directing talent for this movie isn't better than Fury Road, because for his directing talent in Fury Road is just perfect. But still, though, his directing talent for this movie still is beautiful. And well, for Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba, who are of course the main stars in the film, it doesn't kind of, well, near the halfway point in the film, it doesn't really kind of focus a whole lot of them, because it cuts back. It just kind of cuts to like a few backstories in this film for the character of Jin, which I do understand they had to put that, but it just kind of left me a bit disappointed, because I thought this film would have focused a whole lot of Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba, but this movie doesn't really, because again it cuts to some backstories in this film, which for some of the backstories it almost kind of, they do feel like anthologies, in those anthology stories, but this film really is an anthology film, because again, for those moments in the film, it does kind of cut back to present day when we do see Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba on screen. But for the backstories in the film, I thought some of them was pretty interesting, and as for other ones, I just didn't think they weren't even that interesting enough for me, and it almost kind of made the story not that memorable enough to me for a George Miller film. But I wouldn't say the story isn't bad. The story isn't perfect. It just has a few problems to it. But again, there are some parts that's interesting. But again, it's just not that memorable enough. And it is kind of complicated to really understand what's going on. And as for its concept, I could pretty much describe there's so many ways to describe the whole concept for this film. Like, it's almost like it's a bit like this movie is kind of like an adult fairy tale film, and it's also like an adult version of Aladdin, but except for, while Idris Elba is sort of like a giant mythical being who's almost like a genie, but he's not really called a genie, because again, he's a jinn, and he is called Jinn in this movie. And for the way he's trapped in the film, it's almost like a lamp, even though he's not really trapped in the lamp in this film, because he's trapped in the bottle. And he does grant free wishes, which does have a little bit of essence from Aladdin in this movie. And as for its visuals, which again, I thought the visuals in this movie looked amazing. There are some other parts in the film where it does acquire a few visual effects in this movie, which I thought some moments like that just felt a bit unfinished to me, which that was another issue I did have with its complicated story and not much of Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba in this movie. But in the end, guys, 3,000 Years of Longing, I had a pretty good time with this one. But again, this is not George Miller's best film since Fury Road, but it still is one of his best works. But still, though, it's obviously not a masterpiece or anything like that, and it's not obviously the next Fury Road. But if you're a fan of George Miller as a director, or if you're a fan of these kind of films, or the two main stars in the film, I can definitely say you'll definitely have a good time with this one. If it is playing a local cinema near you, I can definitely say get a ticket for this one. So that's pretty much all to say about 3,000 Years of Longing. I'm going to give 3,000 Years of Longing 3.5 out of 5. Good solid score. Despite the problems I did have with this new George Miller movie, I still managed to have a pretty good time with this one. But again, this is not George Miller's best movie since Fury Road, but it still is one of his good works he's done. And again, if you're a fan of his movies, or you're a fan of like these kind of films, or the cast, again, you'll probably have a good time with this one. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching for my AK After I Saw review on 3,000 Years of Longing. And let me know what you think of this new release, if you've just recently seen this film, if you've already seen this film. Did you have a really good time with this, or were you very disappointed with this? So thank you guys, again, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more reviews. And as always, this has been Foggart's Media Corner signing off.